Some nights change everything, and Dr. Elena Vasquez was about to discover that midnight on Roosevelt Street would rewrite her entire life when a stranger with kind eyes and a 10-year-old passenger rolled down his window and said 3 words that would haunt her dreams for weeks. The rain hammered the sidewalk like angry fists. Elena pressed herself deeper into the bus shelter, scrubs clinging to her exhausted frame, phone screen glowing with the same cruel message. Last bus departed 11:47 p.m. Next service 5:30 a.m. She'd been on her feet for 16 hours straight in the ER, saving lives while her own seemed to crumble one missed connection at a time. Steam rose from the asphalt in ghostly spirals. The street was empty except for a lone pickup truck idling at the red light, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm against the downpour. Elena closed her eyes, calculating. 6 miles home. In this weather, in these shoes, the truck's window rolled down. Need a ride? She looked up to see a man in his 30s, weathered hands gripping the steering wheel, dark hair damp with rain. But it was the small face peering from the passenger seat that made her pause. A boy with curious eyes and a dinosaur backpack clutched to his chest. I don't get in cars with strangers, she called back, though her voice lacked conviction. Smart policy, the man replied. But I've got an 11-year-old referee, and he's got very strict rules about helping people in trouble. The boy leaned forward. Dad says we always stop for doctors. You are a doctor, right? Because of the stethoscope and the really tired eyes. Elena couldn't help but smile. What's your name, referee? Miguel Santos. This is my dad, Daniel. We're coming back from the observatory. Did you know Saturn has 83 moons? Before she could answer, Daniel spoke again. I'm a paramedic. Off duty. Miguel's right. We don't leave medical professionals stranded. No agenda, no weirdness. Just a ride home and maybe some educational facts about the solar system. The rain intensified. Elena's sneakers were already soaked through, and the walk home would take 2 hours in this weather. She looked at Miguel's earnest face, then at Daniel's patient expression. No pressure, no expectation. Just an offer. Hop in, Daniel said simply. She ran to the truck. Inside, the cab smelled like coffee and strawberry air freshener. Miguel twisted around to face her, grinning. You smell like hospital, but not in a bad way. More like helping people. Miguel, Daniel warned gently, pulling into traffic. Remember personal space. It's fine, Elena said, buckling her seatbelt. I probably do smell like antiseptic and exhaustion. Where to? Daniel asked. Riverside Gardens. Building C. He nodded, turning onto the main road. The silence wasn't awkward. It was the comfortable quiet of people who understood long days and longer nights. You really work at the hospital? Miguel asked. Emergency medicine, Elena replied. I patch people up when they're having the worst day of their lives. Like my dad, but inside instead of in the ambulance. She glanced at Daniel's profile. Strong jaw, laugh lines around his eyes, the kind of calm presence that probably made panicked people breathe easier. How long have you been a paramedic? 12 years. Miguel's been my co-pilot for about half of that. Only on the good calls, Miguel clarified. Not the scary ones. The truck hit a pothole, and Elena noticed how Daniel's hands remained steady. On the wheel, practiced, sure. The radio crackled softly with dispatch chatter that he'd turned down, but not off. Even off duty, he was listening. You always pick up random doctors? She asked. Only the ones standing in monsoons at midnight, Daniel replied. Though Miguel did vote to stop for a guy in a clown costume last month. He looked sad. Miguel defended. And clowns are supposed to make people happy, not be sad themselves. Elena laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in weeks. Your dad raised you right. Dad says helping people isn't about what they can do for you. It's about what's right. She looked at Daniel again. His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror for just a moment, long enough for her to see something there. Kindness, yes, but also recognition. Like he saw the weight she carried, the way she moved through the world trying to fix everything around her while forgetting to fix herself. The truck pulled into her apartment complex. Elena reached for her wallet, but Daniel shook his head. No, payment necessary. Just be careful walking alone at night. She opened the door, then paused. Thank you, both of you. Hope your tomorrow's better than your today. Miguel called out as the truck disappeared into the rain. Elena stood in her doorway watching the taillights fade. She didn't know their last name, didn't know if she'd ever see them again. But something about those 10 minutes in a warm truck with a kind man and his wise son had shifted something inside her chest, the tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And when this story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. She climbed the stairs to her empty apartment, but for the first time in months, she didn't feel quite so alone. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in Trauma Bay 4, watching a man die, not from his injuries. Those were fixable. A broken arm, some lacerations, nothing fatal. He was dying from the 40-year silence between him and his son, who sat in the waiting room refusing to come in because of words spoken in anger 15 years ago and never taken back. His vitals are stable, Nurse Janet whispered, but he keeps asking for someone named Tommy. Elena peeled off her gloves, mind racing. She'd seen this before. Patients who survived the medical crisis but couldn't survive their emotional wounds. The man's chart showed no emergency contacts except an old number that went straight to voicemail. Tommy's probably his son, she said. The guy in the waiting room with the same last name and the same stubborn chin. Outside, she found him. Mid-30s, work clothes, hands shaking around a coffee cup that had gone cold hours ago. She'd watched him pace for 2 hours, getting close to the trauma bay door then backing away like it might burn him. Are you Tommy Hernandez? He looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Is he? He's asking for you. Tommy's face crumpled. I can't. We haven't spoken since. God, since Mom's funeral. He said things. I said things back. Now it's been so long, I don't know how to. Elena sat beside him on the uncomfortable waiting room chair. Want to know what I've learned in this job? He nodded. People don't remember the last conversation they had with someone they love. They remember the last chance they had to have one and didn't take it. Tommy stared at the floor. What if he doesn't want to see me? He's been asking for you for 3 hours. That's not the voice of a man who doesn't want to see his son. She watched him wrestle with 15 years of pride and pain. Finally, he stood. The reunion happened in whispers and tears and apologies that should have been spoken years ago. Elena watched through the doorway as father and son bridged a decade and a half with 3 simple words. I'm sorry too. Her shift ended at midnight again. This time, she'd remembered to check the bus schedule. This time, she had a ride arranged with her roommate Sarah. This time, Sarah's car wouldn't start. Elena stood in the same bus shelter, but the rain had stopped. The night was clear and cold, stars visible between the city lights. She pulled out her phone to call a rideshare, then noticed her battery was dead. Of course, the street was quieter tonight. A few late-night delivery trucks, a taxi heading the opposite direction. She started walking, calculating the journey in her tired mind. If she cut through the park and took Roosevelt all the way down, headlights appeared behind her. She moved closer to the buildings, following the safety protocols drilled into her since medical school. Don't make eye contact. Stay in lit areas. Keep walking. The truck slowed. Elena's heart started beating faster until she heard a familiar voice. Elena. She turned to see Daniel's pickup pulling alongside her, Miguel's face pressed to the passenger window. It's the doctor, Miguel announced. Dad, it's Elena. Daniel leaned across the seat. Everything okay? You're walking pretty late. Dead phone, dead car, dead bus schedule, she said, relief flooding through her. The trinity of urban disaster. Hop in, he said, the same words from 3 weeks ago. We were just coming back from stargazing. This time she didn't hesitate. Did you see anything good up there? She asked Miguel as they pulled into traffic. Jupiter. And Dad showed me how to find the North Star. He says it's like a doctor in the sky, always there when people are lost. She glanced at Daniel. Poetic for a paramedic. Kid makes me philosophical, he replied with a shrug. How's the life-saving business? Tonight, I saved a relationship instead of a life. Father and son who hadn't spoken in 15 years. That counts double, Miguel said seriously. Because relationships are like plants. Dad says you have to water them or they die, but sometimes if you water them enough they come back. Elena, look between father and son. Is there anything this kid doesn't have wisdom about? Math homework, Daniel and Miguel said simultaneously, then laughed. The drive felt different this time. Less like emergency assistance, more like. Elena couldn't name it. Comfort, maybe. The radio played soft jazz. Miguel dozed against the window, and she found herself studying Daniel's profile in the dashboard light. Can I ask you something? She said. Shoot. Why do you always seem to find me when I need help? Daniel was quiet for several blocks. Honest answer? I drive this route every night after Miguel's astronomy sessions. Have been for 3 weeks. Her breath caught. You've been looking for me? Not looking, he said quickly. Just hoping that if you needed help again, I'd be around. The truck pulled into her complex. This time, Elena didn't immediately get out. Daniel, yeah, thank you. Again. He turned to look at her fully for the first time, and she saw something in his expression that made her chest tighten. Not attraction exactly, though that was there too. Something deeper, like recognition of a kindred spirit. Elena, yeah, would you? Would you like to have coffee sometime? When we're both not responding to emergencies. Miguel's sleepy voice piped up from the passenger seat. Dad's been practicing that question for 3 weeks. Miguel, Daniel groaned. Elena laughed, soft and genuine. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. As she walked to her building, she heard Miguel's voice through the open window. Dad, I think she likes you back. And Daniel's quiet response. I hope so, buddy. I really hope so. Inside her apartment, Elena stood at her window watching the truck disappear down the street. For the second time in 3 weeks, she felt that crack in her heart widen just a little more. Maybe it was time to stop protecting herself from good things. Maybe it was time to let someone in. The coffee shop Daniel chose was called Moonbeam Cafe, tucked between a used bookstore and a vintage record shop on the quiet side of downtown. When Elena arrived 10 minutes early, she found him already there, sitting at a corner table with Miguel, who was working intently on what appeared to be a science project. Is this a date or a family meeting? She asked, sliding into the chair. Across from them. Both, Miguel announced without looking up from his poster board. Dad was too nervous to come alone, and I have to finish this presentation about black holes. It's due tomorrow. Daniel's cheeks flushed. He insisted on coming. Said he wanted to make sure you were good people. And Elena asked Miguel directly. The boy studied her with the serious expression of a child tasked with important business. You smell like helping people. You laugh at Dad's bad jokes. And you didn't run away when he told you he's been driving by your bus stop for 3 weeks like a creepy stalker. Miguel, Daniel protested. What? You said honesty was important. Elena grinned. Your son has excellent judgment. I'll have a large coffee and whatever pastry pairs well with discussions of gravitational collapse. For the next hour, she learned that Daniel had been raising Miguel alone since the boy was 2, that Miguel's mother had died in a car accident, and that father and son had developed a language of inside jokes and shared wonder that made Elena's chest ache with something she couldn't name. What about you? Daniel asked as Miguel colored in his diagram of an event horizon. Family. Parents are back in Mexico. I haven't seen them since medical school started. My younger sister thinks I'm too serious. My older brother thinks I work too much. And my grandmother sends care packages filled with food and guilt in equal measure. Sounds about right for a family, Daniel said. The guilt means they love you. The food means they think you're too skinny. Miguel added helpfully to Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. Hospital. They need me to come in early. On your day off. Dr. Martinez called in sick, and we're short-staffed. Someone's emergency becomes everyone's emergency. She started to gather her things, but Miguel looked up from his project. Can I ask you something, Elena? Sure. Do you ever get scared? When you're trying to save people. The question caught her off guard. She sat back down, considering her answer carefully. Every day? But you know what I've learned? Being scared means you care. And caring is the most important part of helping people. Dad gets scared too, Miguel confided. Sometimes he has bad dreams about the calls where he couldn't save someone. Daniel's face went carefully blank. Miguel, it's okay, Elena said gently. We all carry the ones we couldn't save. It's part of the job. Something passed between her and Daniel then. The recognition of shared burden, the weight that people in their profession carried but rarely talked about. I should go, she said, standing again. I'll drive you, Daniel offered. You don't have to. Dad wants to, Miguel interrupted. And I want to see the hospital. I've never been inside one when no one was dying. 15 minutes later, Elena stood in the parking lot of Mercy General with Daniel and Miguel beside her. The hospital loomed against the afternoon sky, all glass and steel and purpose. This is where you work? Miguel asked, awed. This is where I try to put people back together, Elena replied. Like Humpty Dumpty. Exactly like Humpty Dumpty. Except sometimes we actually can. Her pager buzzed urgently. She looked at the message, and her face changed. What is it? Daniel asked. Multi-car accident on the interstate. At least 6 vehicles. They're calling in everyone. Daniel's expression shifted too, the same professional mask she'd seen him wear. I should check if they need additional ambulances. Dad, Miguel said quietly. They both looked down at him. His face had gone pale, the way children's faces do when they suddenly remember that the adults they love disappear into dangerous places. Elena knelt to his eye level. Hey, you know what the difference is between your dad and other people? Miguel shook his head. Other people run away from trouble. Your dad runs toward it. And that's not something to be scared of. That's something to be proud of. But what if nothing? Daniel said firmly, ruffling his son's hair. Remember what we always say? We help people because that's who we are, Miguel recited. And we come home because that's where we belong. Elena stood, looking at both of them. In the space of 2 hours over coffee, something had shifted. The careful distance she maintained with everyone had crumbled without her permission. Elena, Daniel said. Yeah, be careful in there. You too, if you get called out. They looked at each other for a long moment, and Elena realized they were both thinking the same thing. That caring about someone in their line of work was a luxury they couldn't afford and a necessity they couldn't avoid. Come on, Miguel, Daniel said. Let's get you home so you can finish that black hole project. Will we see Elena again? Miguel asked as they walked toward the truck. I hope so, Daniel replied, glancing back at her one more time. Elena watched them drive away, then turned toward the hospital. As she walked through the automatic doors, she carried with her the warmth of Miguel's laughter and the memory of Daniel's steady presence. For the first time in her career, she had something to come home to after the worst shifts. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Inside the ER, chaos was already building. But Elena Santos smiled as she scrubbed in, because for once, she knew exactly why she was fighting so hard to save lives. She had people waiting for her. The accident was worse than anyone had anticipated. Elena's hands moved with practiced precision. As she worked on patient number 4, a young mother with internal bleeding and 2 frightened children asking when mommy would wake up. Around her, the trauma bay hummed with controlled chaos. Monitors beeping, orders being called. The steady rhythm of people fighting death and winning. But she'd been in surgery for 6 hours when her pager buzzed with a message that made her blood freeze. Incoming trauma. Paramedic Daniel Santos. ETA 3 minutes. The scalpel nearly slipped from her hands. Dr. Vasquez? The surgical nurse looked at her with concern. Are you okay? Elena forced herself to breathe. Professional. She was a professional. I'm fine. Close for me. She stripped off her surgical gown and ran toward the trauma bay, her heart hammering against her ribcage. This was exactly why she didn't let people in. This was exactly why she kept her distance. When you cared about someone in this business, every emergency could be the one that destroyed you. The ambulance doors burst open. Daniel was conscious, which was the first miracle. The second was that he was arguing with his partner about patient priority, which meant his brain was functioning normally. I'm telling you, Rodriguez, the passenger in the blue sedan needs to go first. Possible pneumothorax and, shut up, Santos, Rodriguez said firmly. You've got a head injury and possible internal bleeding. Let someone else be the hero for 5 minutes. Elena stepped forward as they wheeled him in. Daniel's eyes found hers immediately, and she saw relief flood his features. Elena, thank God. Miguel, where is Miguel? She asked Rodriguez, falling into step beside the gurney. Safe. At the neighbor's house. Kid called 911 himself when Daniel didn't come home on schedule. Smart boy. Elena's hands were already assessing Daniel's injuries. Head laceration, bruised. Ribs, possible concussion. Bad enough to be here, not bad enough to be critical. She could work with this. What happened? She asked, sliding into professional mode even as her personal terror threatened to overwhelm her. T-bone collision. Drunk driver ran a red light. Hit the ambulance Daniel was driving. Other guy walked away without a scratch, naturally. Elena felt something dark and furious rise in her chest. She pushed it down. Emotion was the enemy of good medicine. Daniel, can you tell me your full name and today's date? Daniel Miguel Santos, October 15th. And before you ask, yes, I know who the president is, and yes, I remember you looking beautiful in that coffee shop this morning, even though you were worried about Miguel's opinion of your pastry choices. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Concussion symptoms include inappropriate humor, apparently. Only when I'm trying to impress pretty doctors. Save your strength for flirting with the nurses, she said, but her voice was gentle. I need to get some images of your ribs. An hour later, after x-rays and stitches and more tests than Daniel thought necessary, Elena finally allowed herself to sit in the chair beside his bed. The curtain was drawn around them, creating a small pocket of privacy in the chaos of the ER. How bad? He asked quietly. Mild concussion, 3 bruised ribs, 12 stitches. You'll have a headache for a few days and look like you went 10 rounds with a prizefighter, but you'll live. Daniel closed his eyes. I need to call Miguel. He's probably terrified. Already taken care of. Your neighbor Mrs. Chun called to say. Miguel had dinner and finished his homework and wants to know if you'll still be able to take him to the science fair tomorrow. The science fair. Daniel groaned. His black hole project. He's been working on it for weeks. You'll be there, Elena said firmly. Headache and all. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her, with an expression she couldn't quite read. Elena, yeah. This morning, when you had to leave for the hospital, Miguel asked me something. What? He asked if I was going to marry you. Elena's breath caught. What did you tell him? I told him it was too early to think about things like that. That people need time to get to know each other before they make big decisions. And then he asked if I loved you. The monitors beeped softly around them. Elena felt the world narrow to this moment, this conversation, this man lying in a hospital bed with his heart in his eyes. What did you tell him? She whispered. I told him the truth, that I think I'm falling in love with you. But that scared me because people in our line of work don't get guarantees. We don't get promises that everyone comes home safe. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, and you know what he said? He said, Dad, being scared of losing someone good just means you finally found someone worth keeping. A tear rolled down Elena's cheek. Your son is too wise for his own good. Elena, when I was lying on that gurney thinking I might not make it, you know what my first thought was? She shook her head. That I never got to tell you I love you. That Miguel would have to grow up without ever seeing what it looks like when two people choose each other completely. Elena reached for his hand, careful of the foreline. Daniel, I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other's middle names or favorite movies. Or how we take our coffee. Cream, no sugar, she interrupted. And it's Marie. Elena Marie Vasquez. And my favorite movie is The Princess Bride because true love conquers all. Daniel smiled, the first real smile since he'd been wheeled in. Daniel Miguel Santos. Black coffee, preferably burned. And the Iron Giant, because sometimes being different is what makes you a hero. Those are good answers, Elena said softly. Elena, yeah, I love you. It's ridiculous and impractical and probably terrible timing, but I love you. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead, tasting salt and antiseptic and hope. I love you too. And you're right. It's ridiculous and impractical and terrible timing. But, Miguel's right. Being scared of losing someone good just means you finally found someone worth keeping. Outside the curtain, the ER continued its dance of crisis and healing. But inside their small sanctuary, Elena Santos and Daniel Santos, she liked the sound of that, held each other's hands, and began to believe in something they both thought was too dangerous to want at a future where they both came home, the science fair was held in Jefferson Elementary's gymnasium, which smelled like floor wax and childhood dreams. Miguel's black hole project sat between a volcano that actually erupted and a solar system made entirely of different types of candy, but Elena thought his was the most beautiful thing in the room. Daniel stood beside her wearing sunglasses to hide the spectacular bruising around his left eye, looking like a disgruntled action hero at a children's educational event. You sure you're up for this? Elena asked for the third time that morning. I promised him I'd be here. Besides, the doctor said I'd live. The doctor said you should be resting. The doctor doesn't have an 11-year-old son who's been preparing for this for 6 weeks. Elena watched Miguel explain the concept of event horizons to a girl with pigtails and a judge with a clipboard. His face was animated, hands gesturing wildly as he described how nothing, not even light, could escape a black hole's gravitational pull. "He's remarkable," she said softly. "He gets that from his mother," Daniel replied. She was a teacher, had this way of making everything sound like the most fascinating thing in the world. It was the first time he'd mentioned Miguel's mother without pain shadowing his voice. Elena took that as progress. What was she like? Daniel was quiet for a moment, considering. Brave. She never met a stray animal or lost person she wouldn't try to save. Miguel has her heart. And your stubbornness. That's the Santos family curse. We're all too stubborn to quit when we should. Elena smiled, then noticed a woman approaching their booth. Mid-50s, blonde hair in a perfect bob, the kind of smile that looked practiced. She walked with purpose, and the confidence of someone who expected to be recognized. "Daniel Santos?" the woman said, extending a manicured hand. "I'm Patricia Kellerman, Miguel's teacher." Daniel shook her hand carefully. "Nice to meet you. Miguel talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope." Mrs. Kellerman's smile was bright, but her eyes were assessing, taking in Daniel's bruised face and Elena's presence. "And this must be Elena Vasquez," Elena said, extending her own hand. "Family friend." The lie came automatically, a protective instinct she didn't entirely understand. "How wonderful," Mrs. Kellerman said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Miguel's mentioned you, of course. The doctor who gives his father rides home from work." Elena felt her cheeks warm. She glanced at Daniel, who was suddenly very interested in Miguel's poster about gravitational lensing. "Something like that," Elena replied. "I see." Mrs. Kellerman's smile tightened slightly. "Well, I wanted to speak with you, Mr. Santos, about Miguel's recent behavior in class." Daniel's attention snapped back to the conversation. "Is there a problem?" "Not a problem exactly. More of a concern. Miguel's been quite distracted lately. Drawing pictures during math class, talking about weekend trips to the observatory, mentioning someone named Elena quite frequently." Elena felt her stomach drop. This was it. The moment when her presence in their lives became a complication instead of a comfort. "With respect, Mrs. Kellerman," Daniel said, his voice carefully controlled, "Miguel's grades are excellent. His behavior is exemplary, and what he talks about at home is frankly none of your business." "Of course," Mrs. Kellerman said quickly. "I'm simply suggesting that children of single parents can sometimes become overly attached to temporary figures in their lives. It can be confusing for them when those relationships don't work out." Elena felt like she'd been slapped. The words stung not because they were cruel, but because they echoed her own fears. She was temporary. She was a complication. She was exactly the kind of variable that parents like Daniel should protect their children from. "Mrs. Kellerman." Daniel's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "Elena isn't temporary. And my son's emotional well-being is just fine, thank you. I didn't mean to overstep." "Yes, you did." Daniel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "But I appreciate your concern for Miguel's education. I'm sure you'll understand why we won't be needing any more guidance on his personal life." Mrs. Kellerman's face flushed pink. "Of course. Well, good luck with the judging." She walked away. With the stiff dignity of someone who'd been politely but thoroughly dismissed, Elena stared after her, feeling like the walls of the gymnasium were closing in. "Daniel, don't," he said quietly. "Don't let her get in your head." "But what if she's right? What if I'm confusing Miguel? What if I'm making things harder for him?" Daniel turned to face her fully, sunglasses pushed up despite the fluorescent lights that made his bruises look worse. "Elena, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "Miguel has never been happier. He's never been more confident or more excited about the future. And you know why." She shook her head. "Because for the first time since his mother died, he's seeing what it looks like when I'm happy. When I have someone who makes me want to be better. Someone who makes our little family feel complete." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "But what if? What if nothing? Some people will always find reasons to tear down what they don't understand. That doesn't make them right." Before Elena could respond, Miguel came bounding over, his face flushed with excitement. "Dad." "Elena, the judges said my project is in the top 3. They want to ask me more questions in 10 minutes. "That's wonderful, Mijo," Daniel said, pulling his son into a careful hug. "I'm so proud of you." "Elena, did you hear? Top 3. "I heard," she said, forcing a smile. "You're Going to do great. But as Miguel ran back to his booth to prepare for the final judging, Elena felt the weight of Mrs. Kellerman's words settling over her like a heavy blanket. Maybe she was temporary. Maybe she was making things complicated. Maybe loving Daniel and Miguel wasn't enough if it meant putting them at risk of judgment, scrutiny, or pain. As she watched Miguel explain his project to the judges with the confidence of someone who knew he was loved and supported, Elena made a decision that felt like swallowing glass. Sometimes loving someone meant protecting them from yourself, even if it broke your heart. Elena lasted exactly 4 days before she cracked. 4 days of declined calls from Daniel, ignored texts from Miguel, and the kind of hollow ache that made her apartment feel like a mausoleum. She threw herself into work, pulling double shifts and volunteering for the cases nobody wanted. But even 16-hour days couldn't silence the voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like Mrs. Kellerman. Temporary. Complication. Confusing. For the child. She was washing dishes at 2 a.m. on Thursday when someone knocked on her door. Not the polite tap of a neighbor or the urgent rap of an emergency. This was the steady, patient knock of someone who planned to wait all night if necessary. Elena opened the door to find Miguel Santos standing in the hallway wearing pajamas, sneakers, and a determined expression that belonged on someone 3 times his age. "Miguel? What are you doing here? Where's your father?" "Sleeping." I snuck out. He pushed past her into the apartment with the confidence of someone who'd already decided the conversation was happening whether she wanted it or not. "You can't. Just, Miguel, it's the middle of the night. Your dad is going to be frantic when he wakes up and finds you gone." "I left a note," Miguel said, settling himself on her couch like he owned it. "It says I'm solving a grown-up problem and I'll be back by morning." Elena stared at him. "What grown-up problem?" "You disappeared." The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. Elena sat down heavily in the chair across from him. "Miguel, I didn't disappear. I've just been busy with work. You're lying." His voice was matter of fact, not accusatory. Adults always say they're busy when they're really scared. "I'm not scared." Dad says the same thing. But he hasn't smiled once since the science fair, and he keeps checking his phone like he's waiting for someone to call who never does. Elena's heart twisted. "Your dad is fine. He's strong and capable and sad." Miguel's eyes, so much like his father's, were steady and serious. Really, really sad. The kind of sad that makes him forget to eat dinner and stay up all night staring at nothing. Elena closed her eyes. "Miguel, sometimes adults have to make hard choices. Because of mean teacher lady." Elena's eyes flew open. "What?" "I heard Dad on the phone with Mrs. Chun. He said mean teacher lady made you think you were bad for our family. But that you weren't bad. You were just scared." Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. "He said that. And then he said a word I'm not allowed to repeat, but it rhymed with itch, and he was talking about mean teacher lady." Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. "Your father shouldn't use words like that. He said worse ones when you stopped calling." Miguel leaned forward, suddenly looking every bit of his 11 years. "Elena, are you going to be my mom?" The question knocked the breath out of her. "Miguel, that's not. It's complicated." "No, it's not." "Do you love Dad?" "Yes." "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Do you want to be part of our family?" Elena felt tears threatening. "More than anything." "Then what's complicated about it?" Elena stared at this remarkable child who somehow saw the world in colors she'd forgotten existed. "Miguel, some people think I'm not right for your family. That I'll make things harder. For you. What do you think?" I think I'm terrified of hurting you. Both of you." Miguel was quiet for a long moment, swinging his legs from the couch. Then he said, "You know what Dad told me when Mom died?" Elena shook her head. "He said love isn't about being safe. It's about being brave enough to choose each other even when it's scary." The words hit her like lightning. Elena looked at this wise, wonderful boy who'd snuck out of his house in the middle of the night to save her from her own fear, and realized she'd been looking at everything backwards. She wasn't protecting Daniel and Miguel by staying away. She was abandoning them. "Miguel, yeah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth." "Okay, do you really want me to be part of your family? Even if some people don't understand it? Even if it means dealing with mean teacher ladies and complicated questions?" Miguel's face broke into the first real smile she'd seen from him since he'd arrived. "Elena, I picked you for Dad the first night we gave you a ride home. I've been waiting for you guys to figure it out. Elena laughed, tears streaming down her face. You picked me. Duh. Dad needed someone who could keep up with his weird jokes and wouldn't run away when he got all intense about helping people. And I needed someone who smelled like helping people and didn't treat me like I was just a kid. You're not just a kid. You're the wisest person I've ever met. I get that from Dad. Miguel grinned. So are you going to stop being scared and come home with me? Elena looked around her empty apartment, at the dishes in the sink, the medical journals stacked on every surface, the life she'd built around work and solitude, and the safety of keeping everyone at arm's length. Then she looked at Miguel, who was watching her with patience and hope and the absolute certainty that love was always worth the risk. Yeah, she said, standing up and grabbing her keys. Let's go home. The drive back to Daniel's house took 12 minutes. Miguel spent them explaining his plan to wake up his father without giving him a heart attack, which apparently involved sneaking back into his room, waiting exactly 3 minutes, then pretending to have a nightmare that required parental comfort. You've thought this through, Elena said, impressed despite herself. I learned strategy from Dad. He says the best rescues always have a backup plan. They pulled into Daniel's driveway at 3:17 a.m. The porch light was on, and Elena could see the living room lamp glowing through the curtains. He's awake, she said. He's been awake every night since you stopped calling, Miguel replied matter-of-factly. Mrs. Chun brings him coffee at weird hours because she's worried he's going to collapse from exhaustion. Elena's heart twisted again. She'd been so focused on protecting them that she'd never considered she might be causing the exact kind of pain she was trying to prevent. They made it exactly 3 steps up the front walk before the door flew open. Daniel stood in the doorway, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that had seen better days. His hair sticking up at odd angles, and his eyes wild with panic that immediately shifted to relief when he saw Miguel, then confusion when he saw Elena. Miguel Santos, he said, his voice carefully controlled. You are in so much trouble I haven't invented the punishment yet. I know, Miguel replied cheerfully. But I fixed it. Fixed what? Elena was broken, but she's better now. Daniel's eyes moved from his son to Elena, and she saw the exact moment he realized what had happened. The careful hope that crept across his features almost broke her heart all over again. Elena, he said quietly. I'm sorry, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I let fear make my decisions. I'm sorry I hurt you both when all you ever did was love me. Elena, I'm not temporary, she continued, stepping closer. I'm not a complication. I'm not going to confuse your son or make your life harder. I'm going to love you both with everything I have for as long as you'll let me. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the porch light. Then he said, Are you sure? Because Miguel's right. I haven't been handling your absence very well. I'm sure. I'm terrified and completely sure. Good, Miguel announced. Now can we go inside? It's cold and I have school tomorrow, and you guys need to figure out the kissing part so we can all move on with our lives. Elena laughed loud and bright in the quiet neighborhood. Daniel grinned, the first real smile she'd seen from him in days. The kissing part? Elena asked. You've been dancing around each other for weeks, Miguel said, rolling his eyes. It's very dramatic, but also very slow. Daniel stepped closer, close enough that Elena could smell his soap and see the laugh lines around his eyes. Well, we can't have Miguel thinking we're slow. Definitely not, Elena agreed, reaching up to touch the side of his face. Elena, yeah, I love you. Scared or not scared, complicated or simple, temporary or forever, I love you. I love you too, she whispered. Forever sounds good. When they kissed, finally, it tasted like coming home. Behind them, Miguel made exaggerated gagging noises, but Elena could hear him laughing 2.6 months later. Elena stood in the kitchen of what had become their house, watching Daniel attempt to make pancakes while Miguel provided running commentary on his technique. Dad, you're supposed to wait for the bubbles before you flip them. I see bubbles. Those are burns, not bubbles. Constructive criticism is not welcome during breakfast preparation, Daniel replied. But he was smiling. Elena wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. Maybe I should take over before you set off the smoke alarm again. The smoke alarm incident was 1 time. It was 3 times, Miguel corrected. But Elena taught you how to make eggs, so you're getting better. The easy domesticity of the moment still caught Elena off guard sometimes. After years of eating cereal for dinner and falling asleep to the sound of medical journals, she was still adjusting to the beautiful chaos of family life. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it and froze. "What is it?" Daniel asked. Noticing her expression, Elena picked up the phone, reading the message twice to make sure she'd understood correctly. "It's from the hospital. Dr. Rivera wants to see me in his office this morning. He says it's about a special opportunity." Dr. Rivera was the chief of emergency medicine, the kind of man who didn't call meetings about special opportunities unless something significant was happening. "That sounds good, right?" Miguel asked, looking between them. "I don't know," Elena replied honestly. "In my experience, special opportunities usually mean either really good news or really complicated news." An hour later, Elena sat across from Dr. Rivera's desk trying to process what he'd just told her. "The Mayo Clinic," she repeated. "Their emergency medicine residency program. It's a 2-year fellowship, Elena. The kind of opportunity that comes along once in a career. In Minnesota." "Yes, in Minnesota, 2,000 miles away from here." Elena stared at the paperwork in front of her, an official offer letter, complete with salary details and start dates. It was everything she dreamed of when she'd first decided to become a doctor. The prestige, the training, the chance to work with the best medical minds in the country. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're brilliant. Because your patient outcomes are exceptional. Because 3 different department heads have personally recommended you." Dr. Rivera leaned forward. "Elena, this is the fellowship that writes its own ticket. You complete this program, and you can work anywhere in the world. Name your position, name your salary." Elena nodded slowly, her mind racing. "When would it start?" 6 weeks. They want you there for the spring cohort." 6 weeks, she thought. About Daniel, probably burning pancakes at home right now, while Miguel offered helpful suggestions. She thought about the life they'd built together, the quiet Sunday mornings, and the shared glances across crowded emergency rooms, and the way Miguel had started calling her Elena Mom when he thought no one was listening. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. But Elena." Dr. Rivera's expression was serious. "Don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait." That evening, Elena sat on the front porch with Daniel while Miguel worked on homework at the kitchen table. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. "You're quiet tonight," Daniel observed. Elena had been trying to figure out how to bring up the fellowship for hours. Every time she started to speak, the words stuck in her throat. "Daniel, what would you say if I told you I'd been offered an incredible job opportunity?" "I'd say congratulations and ask where we need to start packing." "We." He turned to look at her fully. "Elena, Miguel and I aren't staying here without you. Whatever this opportunity is, wherever it takes you, we're going with you." Just like that. Just like that. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't even know what it is yet. Doesn't matter. You're our family. Families stick together." She took a shaky breath. "It's a fellowship at the Mayo Clinic. 2 years. In Minnesota." Daniel whistled low. That's huge, Elena. That's life-changing." "Yeah, but you don't sound excited." Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching the streetlights flicker on in the gathering dusk. "I've spent my entire adult life chasing the next opportunity, the next promotion, the next achievement that would prove I was good enough. And now I have everything I actually want right here." "Elena, I don't want to go to Minnesota, Daniel. I don't want the prestige or the perfect career track or the chance to work with the best doctors in the country. I want to stay here with you and Miguel and make burned pancakes on Sunday mornings and help you with late-night emergency calls." Daniel was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "Are you sure? Because this is the kind of opportunity that might not come again. I'm sure. I've been chasing opportunities my whole life, and I finally realized I was running toward the wrong finish line." "What's the right finish line?" Elena smiled, reaching for his hand. "This. Right here. A life where I'm not just saving other people's families, I'm part of one." From inside the house, Miguel's voice called out, "Elena, can you help me with this math problem? Dad tried, but he's bad at fractions." "I heard that," Daniel called back. "It's true," Miguel replied cheerfully. Elena laughed, standing up and pulling Daniel with her. "Come on. Let's go help your son with his homework." "Our son?" Daniel corrected softly. Our son. Elena agreed, and the words felt like coming home. The next morning, Elena walked into Dr. Rivera's office with her decision already made. She placed the unsigned fellowship offer on his desk and sat down. You're not taking it, he said. It wasn't a question. No, I'm not. Dr. Rivera studied her face. Can I ask why? Elena thought about the question seriously. 6 months ago, she would have taken the fellowship without hesitation. She would have seen it as validation, as proof that all her sacrifices had been worth it. Now she saw it differently. Because I realized that the life I want isn't the one I thought I was supposed to want, she said finally. I want to be the doctor who knows her patients' names and remembers their stories. I want to go home to people who love me. I want to help Miguel with his homework and teach Daniel to make pancakes that don't burn. Those are good reasons, Dr. Rivera said quietly. I think so too. He nodded, then smiled. For what it's worth, Elena, I think you're making the right choice. The Mayo Clinic will train excellent doctors, but we need doctors who remember why they got into medicine in the first place. To help people. To help people, he agreed. And it sounds like you've found the people who help you too. That afternoon, Elena came home to find Daniel and Miguel in the backyard, working together to hang a tire swing from the old oak tree. Miguel was holding the rope while Daniel secured it to a sturdy branch. What's all this? She asked. Miguel decided our backyard needed a swing, Daniel explained. For when kids come over to play. What kids? Miguel grinned at her. The kids. We're going to have someday. I told Dad I want at least 2 little brothers or sisters, but I'd settle for one if it's really cute. Elena felt her cheeks warm. Miguel, what? You and Dad are getting married, right? That's what people do when they love each other and live together and share pancake duties. Elena looked at Daniel, who had gone suspiciously quiet while adjusting the swing. Are we getting married? I was going to ask you properly, Daniel said, not meeting her eyes. With a ring and a plan, and maybe when Miguel wasn't standing right here offering commentary. Ask her now, Miguel demanded. The swing is romantic. Daniel laughed, shaking his head. He walked over to Elena and took her hands in his, dirt-stained and calloused from an afternoon of yard work. Elena Marie Vasquez, he said, his voice suddenly serious. Will you marry me? Will you be Miguel's mom and my wife and the person we come home to every day for the rest of our lives? Yes, Elena said without hesitation. Yes to all of it. Miguel hooped and launched himself at both of them, wrapping them in a hug that smelled like fresh air and possibility. Can I be the ring bearer? He asked, his voice muffled against their shoulders. You can be whatever you want, Elena replied, holding tight to her family. As long as you promise to help me keep your father from burning breakfast. Deal. Miguel said solemnly as the sun set behind the oak tree with its new tire swing. Elena Santos, she was already practicing the name in her head, realized she'd found something better than the perfect career. She'd found the perfect life. 1 year later. Elena stood in the bathroom of their house at 5:30 in the morning, staring at a plastic stick that had just changed everything. 2 pink lines, which she'd suspected for a week, but seeing the confirmation made her legs suddenly unsteady. She sat down, on the edge of the bathtub, holding the test with trembling hands. A baby. She and Daniel were going to have a baby. Miguel was going to be a big brother. The thought filled her with equal parts joy and terror. After everything they'd been through, the late-night emergencies, the careful blending of their lives, the gradual creation of something that felt like forever, now this. The ultimate proof that they were a real family. Elena, you okay in there? Daniel's voice came through the door, heavy with sleep. I'm fine, she called back. Though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears, she heard his footsteps moving away, probably heading to the kitchen to start coffee before his early shift. In 20 minutes, he'd wake Miguel for school, and their morning routine would begin. Breakfast debates, backpack searches, the familiar chaos of a family getting ready to face the day. Elena looked at the test again. Still 2 pink lines. She was a doctor. She understood the science of pregnancy, the biological processes, the medical milestones. But none of her training had prepared her for the emotional earthquake of knowing that she was carrying Daniel's child. Their child. That a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Elena, it was Miguel's voice, still thick with sleep. Can I come in? I had a weird dream. Elena quickly tucked the pregnancy test into the bathroom drawer. Of course, sweetheart. Miguel shuffled in wearing dinosaur pajamas and his hair sticking up at impossible angles. At 12 now, he was getting too old for nightmare comfort, but he still sought it out occasionally when the world felt too big or too uncertain. What was the dream about? Elena asked, pulling him into a hug. You and Dad were gone, he said quietly. Not dead or anything. Just gone. And I was alone in the house calling for you. But nobody answered. Elena's heart clenched. Oh, Miguel. You know we're not going anywhere, right? I know. But sometimes I still get scared that this isn't real. That I'm going to wake up and it'll just be me and Dad again. And you'll be back to being the doctor who rides the bus. Elena kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his shampoo and childhood. This is real. We're real. And I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. They stood there in the quiet bathroom, holding each other while the house woke up around them. Elena thought about the pregnancy test in the drawer, about the conversation she'd need to have with Daniel, about how this new development would change their carefully balanced family dynamic. But mostly she thought about how lucky she was to have found these two people who had taught her that love wasn't something to be earned or achieved. It was something to be chosen again and again, in moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Elena. Miguel's voice was muffled against her shoulder. Yeah, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know. Later that morning, after Miguel had left for school and Daniel had headed to work, Elena found herself alone with the pregnancy test and a cup of coffee she couldn't drink. She'd planned to tell Daniel immediately, but something had held her back. Maybe it was the memory of Miguel's nightmare, the reminder of how fragile their happiness still felt sometimes. Maybe it was her own surprise at how much she wanted this baby, how the thought of carrying Daniel's child filled her with a joy so fierce it scared her. Her phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Hey, she answered. Hey yourself. You seem distracted this morning. Everything okay? Elena smiled at his ability to read her moods even through the chaos of their morning routine. Everything's fine. Just tired. You've been tired a lot lately. Hazard of the job. His voice carried the skeptical tone he used when he suspected. She wasn't telling him everything. Well, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Miguel and I need you healthy. I will. Elena. Yeah. I love you. I love you too. After they hung up, Elena sat in their quiet kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of their life together. Miguel's science fair ribbon on the refrigerator, Daniel's EMT certification renewal notice on the counter. The grocery list they'd written together the night before. This was where she belonged. This was the life she'd chosen. And now it was about to get even better. That evening, Elena cooked Daniel's favorite dinner while Miguel worked on homework at the kitchen table. She'd rehearsed the conversation in her head dozens of times, but every version felt inadequate for the magnitude of what she needed to say. Dad, Miguel said suddenly, looking up from his math worksheet. Do you think our family is complete? Daniel looked up from where he was helping Elena set the table. What? Do you mean, Mijo? Like, do you think we need anyone else to be perfect? Elena's hands stilled on the serving spoon. She glanced at Daniel, who was studying their son with the focused attention he gave to medical emergencies. I think our family is pretty great just the way it is, Daniel said carefully. Why do you ask? Miguel shrugged. Just wondering. Like, if we had a baby, would that be good or would that be too many people? Elena nearly dropped the serving bowl. Miguel, why are you asking about babies? Mrs. Rodriguez next door is having one. And Jimmy at school just got a little sister. I was just thinking it might be cool to be a big brother. Daniel and Elena looked at each other across the kitchen. In his eyes, Elena saw curiosity, hope, and the same careful optimism that had carried them through every major milestone in their relationship. Would you want to be a big brother? Elena asked softly. Miguel's face lit up. Are you kidding? I'd be the best big brother ever. I could teach them about space and how to make Dad's pancakes not burn and all the best hiding spots in the house. Elena took a deep breath. It was time. Miguel, can you come here for a minute? He abandoned his homework and joined them at the kitchen counter. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out the pregnancy test, placing it on the counter between them. Daniel stared at it for a long moment, his face cycling through surprise, joy, and wonder. Is that? He started. 2 pink lines, Elena confirmed. Which means yes. We're having a baby. Miguel's whoop of excitement could probably be heard 3 houses away. He launched himself at Elena, hugging her so tightly she could barely breathe. Really? Really, really? Really, really? Elena laughed, tears streaming down her face. Dad, did you hear? I'm gonna be a big brother. Daniel was still staring at the pregnancy test, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He looked up at Elena with an expression of pure wonder. We're having a baby, he said quietly. We're having a baby. He crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around while Miguel danced around them both. I can't believe it, Daniel whispered against her hair. A baby. Our baby. Are you happy? Elena asked, suddenly needing to hear him say it. Happy doesn't even begin to cover it, he replied, setting her down and cupping her face in his hands. Elena, you've given me everything I never knew I wanted. And now we get to give Miguel a sibling and watch our family grow, Elena finished. Can we paint the nursery with stars? Miguel asked, practically vibrating with excitement. And get one of those mobiles that plays music? And teach the baby about black holes. Slow down, buddy, Daniel laughed. The baby won't be here for several months. But we can start planning now, right? I need to make lists. Important big brother lists. As Miguel ran off to find paper and pencils for his planning, Daniel pulled Elena close again. Are you scared? He asked quietly. Terrified, Elena admitted, but also more excited than I've ever been about anything. Same. They stood together in their kitchen, holding each other while their son made elaborate plans for his future sibling, and dinner grew cold on the stove. Elena thought about the girl she'd been a year and a half ago, the one who rode the bus alone and ate cereal for dinner and believed that love was a luxury she couldn't afford. That girl could never have imagined this. A husband who spun her around the kitchen when she told him they were having a baby, a son who whooped with joy at the prospect of being a big brother, a life so full of love and laughter and ordinary magic that it sometimes took her breath away. Daniel, she said softly. Yeah, thank you. For what? For stopping at that bus stop. For saying hop in. For showing me what home feels like. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sure. Thank you for getting in the truck. 9 months later, Elena held their daughter for the first time while Daniel and Miguel looked on with matching expressions of awe. Isabella Santos had her father's dark hair and her mother's determined chin, and when she opened her eyes for the first time, Elena swore she could see the universe in them. She's perfect, Miguel whispered, gently touching his sister's tiny hand. Look, Dad, she's holding my finger. That means she already knows you're her big brother, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Elena looked around the hospital room at her family, her husband, her son, her daughter, and felt the same sense of wonder she'd experienced that first night in Daniel's truck. Sometimes the best things in life happened when you least expected them, when you were just trying to get home from a long day and a stranger offered you a ride. I love you, she whispered to all of them. We love you too, Daniel replied. All of us, always. Outside the hospital window, the city sparkled in the night, full of people trying to find their way home. But Elena Santos was already there, surrounded by the people who had taught her that home wasn't a place. It was a choice you made to love someone completely, to build something beautiful together, and to believe that the best stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Rate this story from 0 to 10, and if it touched your heart, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another tale of love finding its way home. Remember, sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with 3 simple words. Hop in. Until next time, stay open to the magic hiding in ordinary moments, and never underestimate the power of saying yes when love offers you a ride.